you bring up a very good point of it may be why they seek companions in dogs, because dogs love you no matter what. You could be broke and both be starving on the streets and they're both good. Your dog is still going to be by your side.
Right. I mean, what's the worst thing a dog's going to want? He's going to go for a walk, going to use the bathroom, he's going to want food, but he's not going to ask you for your checkbook.
No, at all, in any way, shape, or form. But that's something I never thought about. I never thought about that as far as, like NFL players, being sports.
This is just for me looking on the outside. And again, I could be wrong here. I'll preface it, but it seems to me that sports figures, even minor ones, people who are maybe in the NFL, but they're not so famous, have a lot more pressure on them than actors do, because there's more camera time on them publicly throughout the year than there is necessarily on actors. And I wonder if their pressure, I'm not saying it's worse or better for either side, just that it's the duration is more, right? And so I wonder if the flavor of the pressure that, say, a sports figure would feel is different than, say, an actor. I don't know. It's a good question, but it's for somehow it just clicked to me that, like, wow, when you after the day, you get all these coaches, you get all this pressure on you, you have the media on you, and then you have the fans on you, and you just want to go home, because you don't want to go home and maybe, I mean, not all of us are blessed with the best wives in the universe that love us, and then they go home and listen to the kids and your spouse complain, and then they get their dog. They sit down with their dog on the couch and watch TV a little bit and decompress. I could see that. I mean, but on the other side, maybe
I think too, another dynamic to that is age, which I never really realized it until, now that I'm an empty nester and I had kids super young. So but I'm now going into households of multi-millionaire NFL football players that are not much older than my 24-year-old son. You know what I mean? And thinking of the mentality that he has at 24 years old, and then remembering what I was like at 24 years old. And then all of a sudden thinking, here you have these, young adults, that are just learning about life, thrown into the limelight like that, thrown into the pot, being on camera all the time, having to be prim and proper, always having to look good, to say the right thing, to do the right thing. You can party, but you can't party too much, like all of these expectations that they have. They do need something like a companion, something that they can just have as their own to decompress. But I think that dynamic too was something that I didn't think about, because I played fantasy football. I've been a huge football nerd most of my life. And then all of a sudden now I see more of that, and they are young. They're in their mid 20s starting out and have these careers and have these expectations and have that. I can't imagine even my own son like having to deal with that. I can't, the mental stress that has to have on you. I just, at even a young age, it takes a very strong mindset to have to deal with that.
They're amazing. I mean, I remember when I was 24, if you'd given me that level of success and that kind of money, I'd have blown up. And the stress, and they're under a microscope constantly. There is a camera on them. You cannot do anything without a camera being on you anywhere anymore. And at 24, we're still crazy young men with crazy hormones going through our bodies, and we are prone to making mistakes and poor decisions. Not that they're bad people, not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I don't think it's even close. It's just part of the human experience, right? It's how we learn. We make mistakes, and I just cannot imagine having to live. It must be like living in this pressure cooker constantly, like thinking about, if I do this, what happens? And then they have to plan out the reaction of everything they do and say. That's got to be crazy.
The only thing that I can even remotely relate to that was after the release of Quentin Tarantino, and we were under investigation from PETA. You know what I mean? Like everything we did, every video we had, every scrutiny, people were like coming and commenting. It could have been the end of us. One thing, we couldn't go on interviews. We couldn't do anything, because anything that the media can twist,
They
You
do.
can mean it one way, but the way that people receive it could be completely different. And being a pit bull breeder, I got hate. Matt and I were in Montana in this little bar, and it was like as soon as they heard pit bull breeder, it was like this girl totally, like, I ended up leaving the bar crying. You know what I mean? Like, there is so much misinformation. People have so much judgment against what they think in their mind something may be, or the way that it is. And so we had to be super careful what we said, what we put on social media, make sure that all the dogs are clipped, everything is perfect. You know what I mean? Because one person made one comment about a picture that Sayori was in and said that her nails were too long, and then accused us of neglect. You know what I mean? Like, I can't even imagine on that level where they are, what that is like. Because I know for me, like, I didn't even want to go outside of my house. I was
Right.
terrified of
Right.
like people following us and doing things because we were a breeder, because we bred pit bulls, and the image of that and the way that it was twisted in me. It was just a very brief, short amount of time, but it was enough for me to like super be like, I don't want to do this. You know, we ended up having someone approach us, and we were going to do, and then COVID hit, but we were going to do a reality TV show. And if you go on our website, you can see the clip that we actually did for that, the trailer that we did for that. And my husband and I had many conversations, and I was like, I don't want this. I don't want to do this. I don't care how big we get. I don't want to do this because I don't want to be judged. I don't think that I can handle, no matter what happens in here, people following me around with cameras and knowing the ins and outs and twisting things the way that they want to. Like, I'm a super private person when it comes to my home life. Like, you don't see me post much about my kids. Like, I don't want them blasted out there. They're not much on social media. We're like super, like, we're hippies. You know, we live in the woods. We do things a bit different. But it was like just knowing what it's like to have haters and to be
Right.
judged and a
Right.
finger pointed at you and to automatically assume. I can't imagine on the level of success that these, you know, actors, actresses, you know, NFL players, baseball players, whoever it is on that level, entertainment wise, you know, what they deal with day in and day out. I saw a brief period of it. And like I said, I didn't even want to leave the house. I was scared to leave the house.
That leads me into my next question with you too. And so I guess let me ask it carefully and let you think about it first, because I think that there is in our society, and this has really gotten worse over the last 25 years, that we allow the most toxic people, the most narcissistic people to judge our most successful people as if they're perfect. They never make any mistakes. There's no cameras on their life. And if they were, they'd probably be in jail. And then they go around to everyone else who's successful and create not even stuff that's true, and they get to pretend that they're altruistic people, that they really care. But if you put most of them under a microscope, you would find they do nothing, they do no charity, they help no one, they're probably some of the worst people in their social groups because they're negative and they just pull people down. What is your feeling on that?
I mean, I really, you know, having those deep dives into the inner work that I've done myself, and being around, you know, unhealthy individuals the majority of my life. Like, I think that what ends up happening is people who are successful are a reflection of, when you come in contact with somebody and you're in an unhealthy state, well, mentally, physically, whatever it may be, and somebody comes that is successful, and somebody who you deep down inside probably admire, but it brings up a reflection of everything that you need to work on inside of you. And so so for me, when I see people spewing hate, or when I see people that want to project, or that they want to bring people down, or come across as, you know, this loving, caring citizen, when in all reality, it's just drama and chaos, I have to remember where they are in their life, and to see them where they are and not take those things personally. And that's a lot of the inner work that I've done. And I think where we get lost in this is when we take on those things. And I'm guilty of it myself, because sometimes it's really hard when people are coming at you, when you're getting that hate, when people are, when you're trying so hard to show them your perspective or your side of things, because, contrasting sides, or even trying to defend yourself. Sometimes the best thing you can do is to be silent and to just let them be, and to realize that they can live in their world, in their bubble, and whoever wants to be in that bubble with them, you go right ahead. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, no matter what, it's not going to be right in your eyes, and you're feeding off of anything I say or do. And so to totally disconnect from that, and to see the person, and to have empathy and compassion for that person, because really at the end of the day, unless you're talking about like political craziness on the back end of, massive opinions and people trying to spew their perspective on life onto you and to judge you and point fingers at you like that's just society today. I don't know where we
No, I was being more specific. Yeah, maybe I should be more clear about what I'm saying. So I was being specific about people who are athletes and movie stars, right? Because there's a certain level of fame that comes with that, and they have to deal with it. But I think that most times a lot of the criticisms that they get is very undeserved.
Look at the suicide rate. Look at the drug use, the alcohol abuse, the spousal abuse, the toxic things that individuals end up using to cope with that. Because it's not talked about. We don't talk about it enough in society, let alone people who are on a pedestal, who are afraid to show any emotion or to do anything, because you're consistently judged and criticized, no matter what you do.
It's always interpreted as the worst possible. It's like it's like reporters are all narcissists. Whatever you do, they will interpret it in the worst possible way to get ratings, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that there's so I'm totally going to get left field with this a little bit. And I think that there is a marketing strategy that's there as well, that, drama, chaos, all of those things. If you look at the shows that we watch, the reality TV shows, it's always, when you get behind the scenes and you start to realize that stuff is not reality at all, that they have a motive, they have an intention, they want you to do this, they want you to do that. It's real, but it's not real. And, they play the game to get their, the person who's watching to engage in it more and to want to keep coming back. They do that stuff on purpose. And so I think that, that comes out in real life too, for marketing strategies. When you're an actor or an actress, a lot of that stuff. So I learned something too. Did you know that the paparazzi, like a lot of it's not even paparazzi. There's certain places in Hollywood where you go, where the paparazzi, where it seems like it's secretive, or, and I know that there are those out there that like have their 1,000, like can see you from top of a mountain somewhere, what I mean, view of a camera, trying to get these pictures of these elite celebrities. But a lot of times, a lot of that, like Matt and I did that. Like when we went in and we, were working with Dee Dee, incredible, by the way, working with our manager, and you start to realize behind the scenes how a lot of this is set up. And we, as human beings, are watching it on TV, feed into it. We feed into the drama, we feed into the chaos, we feed into the pictures, we feed into all of it. And it's done on purpose. A lot of it is done on purpose. And then, but getting lost in that identity. Like I went through something similar with the branding of Mamamos. You get lost in that identity. And I think that's where like a lot of the depression, the anxiety, the whatever, to live up to these expectations and to live this life, but also to like make sure ratings are up and make sure I'm still top of, my game, and I get, the best movie leads or the best position, or I'm, first to play, or whatever it may be. Like it's all like puzzle pieces, Just like you figure out when you become an elite entrepreneur, you talk about like Apex and Ryan Stewmans and being under the microscope. And no matter what you say, you do, somebody's going to take something some way. But you also got to realize too, that a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. A lot of it is smoke and mirrors. And us as consumers love to feed into it. We love it. We love that dopamine hit.
Yeah, I agree that a lot of it is staged.
Love the chaos. We love the drama.
I think whoever started doing that is a great example of an entrepreneur. They're like, oh, the media is just doing this stuff. And like, well, why don't we just use it to our advantage and make something up?
Exactly.
Right. So I fancy myself an amateur author. I've had, short stories and stuff like that published. And the first thing that I learned, right, is there is no story without conflict. So you have, you see the media, they just create conflict, right? And then boom, story, right?
I mean, that's everything.
Right.
How do you get attention? Like sex, drugs, rock and roll. You know what I mean? Like, how do you really, it's just like as old as time, if you really think about it. You know what I mean? Sex sells. You know what I mean? Drugs, addiction, lies, relationships, chaos, drama. That's what sells. Rock and roll. How bizarre. How wild can I really be? You know what I mean? Like, how far can we take it?
Right.
Because we need that attention.
I need the dopamine myself. And
that's the thing. Scroll. I mean, TikTokers, you have more multi-millionaire young adults now that are becoming millionaires from, it was crypto, TikTok. We met a gentleman at the Delaware beaches not too long ago who is a financial advisor, and he's famous. He's a social media on TikTok. He went viral, became famous, totally left his job at Penn State as a teacher, and now gives financial advice on these. He's got a YouTube channel and makes millions of dollars. And my mind is just blown when he told me, like, depending on your followers and the engagement that you get, the money that is being made now in the chaos, in the drama, in knowledge, in, you know what I mean? Like, you have all of this stuff. And now, so what do you have? You have all of these young adults now that don't know reality, that are growing up in this dopamine hit, chaos, drama, no sense of identity, more views, more everything else, living up to expectations, don't have an identity of my own. And now this is the generation that's becoming young adults. Now let's take that to another level. Let's make you famous. You know what I mean? Now let's give you millions of dollars at 20, 21 years old. Now your Instagram fame. What happens in 10 years when the next new thing comes out, and the next younger generation, and the next drama, and the next whatever it may be that goes viral, and, virtual reality? You're not even going to have humans being on there. Now it's all going to be virtual reality.
There's so much I want to say.
Just like you. Do whatever you say, whatever you do.
There's so much I want to say about all that. This is like, we're definitely going to have you back. I wanted to circle back to something else that you had said earlier about people tearing people down. And when you were talking about the woman tearing you down because you were at a bar and you had to leave crying because she said something about your dogs. And there's another gentleman who owns several companies that I interviewed by the name of Jeff Lareau. And he's been on the podcast as well. And he said to me just yesterday, we were talking, and he was talking about why network marketing doesn't work. And I know this sounds off topic, but bear with me. He's talking about why network marketing often fails, right? It doesn't work for most people. And it's because he said that people, once someone else is going to be successful off of your work, even if you're making more, if you're selling $10 and the person above you is getting $2, they don't want to do it. People would rather fail than see someone else successful, right? That's most people. A lot of entrepreneurs are different. Entrepreneurs understand it's like, wait a second, if I can get this guy to make some money, then I can make money. So successful entrepreneurs tend to be very different. And it's an interesting thing. Like, people will literally blow up their lives and their own opportunities to prevent someone else from succeeding, because network marketing works. You just have to trust the process. And then he says something else to me that never occurred to me before. He's like, everything you do is network marketing. If you're working in a restaurant and you're working the cash register, and then you get promoted. Now you're above the cash register. Well, you can't make any money unless the cash register is making money and that person running the cash register is making money. It's a different perception of the same thing. And then you get promoted to manager, and then maybe you own the thing, and maybe you sell it or you have a franchise. It's still, you call it a pyramid scheme, whatever you want. It's still a form of network marketing. Like someone below you is making money and you're getting a piece of it. And so that's how life is everywhere you go. And so, but if people somehow realize, oh, I got it figured out, you're going to make $2 off of me? No way. I'm not going to let you do that. And they'll blow up their own chance of being a millionaire just to prevent someone else from making $2.
And I think that's where a lot of people, like, if you don't have collaborations and you don't build relationships with people, whether that you're never going to go anywhere. There's a lot of truth behind your network is your net worth. Like there's always going to be somebody who's better than you. There's always going to be somebody who has more than you. There's always going to be somebody. And if you're constantly trying to bring them down to your level or below you, you're never going to make it in life. But the thing is those people that are doing that, like we were talking about earlier, it's because it's a reflection of everything that they're not willing to do to get to where that person is. And instead of busting their ass, learning from that person, immersing themselves in their culture, seeing what they can learn from them, and maybe even possibly even do a little bit better because everybody does things a little bit differently in a little bit of a different way. You know what I mean? Get the ideas, learn from these people and grow yourself. You're never going to make it anywhere. You're never going to be here. And the thing about it is that person that's here's already learned that it's okay. You know what I mean? Like you said, that you're built different when you get to that level of success because you realize the importance of those relationships. Every person below you, what is that saying? You are only as good as your worst employee. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of truth to that. If you don't treat your janitor the same way that you treat your executives as far as respect and that level, you never know what can happen with that individual. And for me, like everybody is you. If you are a human being, you are a human being. I don't care. My husband always says that he never could understand and always valued something about me is like, I'm the person that will sit down on a street in the middle of nowhere with a homeless person and have a conversation with them. Not necessarily, like if I have something, I have something, but if I don't, but I have the same compassion and empathy as that person as I would for somebody who's making millions and millions of dollars. You know what I mean? People aren't any different. And I also know what it's like to come from nothing and to have nothing and to be hungry. And I think that's where some of this stuff comes from. You learn, you grow, you evolve. And the more that you put yourself around people who are doing better than you, that think and have the solutions, so already see the thing that they don't realize that they've been where you are. They were where you are. They made the sacrifices, the decisions to bust their ass to get to where these people are. They learned from people who were above them. All of us start down here and we have to work to get here, but you're never going to get here if you continuously put yourself around here where you're the smartest person in the room. If you're here and you're saying, oh, well, you made a mistake because you're higher up and you should know better. No. You should say, you know what? Thank you for teaching me that lesson. Now I know better for when I grow. Thank you for you going through that hard time and sharing it with me, teaching me a lesson so that I can grow from this instead of being like, oh, you're horrible, you should do these expectations. We're all still human. We're all still growing. We're all still evolving. You know what I mean? So it just absolutely blows my mind when people want to tear other people down because they do things differently, because they made a mistake, because they're not living up to your expectations. It's nothing to do with that other person. It has to do as a reflection of who that person is within themselves, because that other person, that's something, and that is a reality. When somebody triggers something inside of me and I'm like, I don't like this person. For one, I trust my intuition immediately. But for two, I ask myself, why? What is it about this person that is something that it's a reflection of something that I need to work on within myself. So when I come up to somebody and I'm like, oh, I don't know about that person. Well, what is it about that person that I don't like? Because that's definitely a reflection of something within me that is triggering me in some way, whether something I need to work on within myself. Maybe it's a memory of something that's happened in the past, but instead of looking at that person, is that I go inward and say, what is it about me that I need to, where do I need to grow, that this person is this insecurity, this whatever it may be? Because really at the end of the day, when you can see people where they are and then see how you're responding to them, then that's really where all the power is in your growth, in your business, in every single way.
I think you're right. And I guess the one thing that I would like to add to all of that is the most successful entrepreneurs I've ever met raise everybody around them. They don't pull them down. They don't knock them down. They don't push them down. And that's not to say that the people that work for them or they work with don't make mistakes, but they handle it in a graceful way, right? Where they make it work. And I only hope that I can grow to be that level of entrepreneur, because it takes time. But yeah, this whole thing about pulling people down, man, don't get me started. All right, so I really want to get into the women's groups that you do, right? Because you when we opened up, you clearly had a lot of passion about that. So what made you start the women's group and get that done? And why, I guess, so as a man, and I just want to say this as a man, like, why are you leaving us out? Like, we want to grow, you know?
You know what? I do have to say something about that. My passion is for women because I can relate from a women's perspective, from the abuse and the neglect and from sexual abuse to, I have severely abusive relationships, those sorts of intimate conversations where women are more prone to open up to other women and become vulnerable, because a lot of times
All right,
the
that's a good
abuse
answer. I cannot find any.
so, but other than that, no, I want to say something about this though, because I truly believe that there is a bigger need for help with men. I think men suffer in silence so much more than women do, and that's why there is a higher increase of suicide rate, because there's all of this, I don't even, you and I already know, and I don't have enough time to get into this, but this toxic masculinity and the mindset of human and all of this stuff. But my passion came from, and the whole reason why is because I wanted to be that. My mom left at a young age. I didn't have this peer woman in my life. And so I'm also working on a nonprofit with the two other women and actually a group of women to help young women starting from the age of 9 build leadership skills for them, for low income, for impoverished, for those kids that are in group homes, foster care system due to no fault of their own, that wouldn't have access to things like this, wouldn't have money to things like this, to be able to have entrepreneurial opportunities, to be a leader, to speak their truth, to tell their story. And so, for me, it always started off with, I wanted to have a sustainable living program for kids that age out of the foster care system, because there is no transition programs. There isn't many. There are some, but there isn't many transition programs out there that really teach you the things that that you would learn from your parents to be able to survive in life. And so that's really where it started. And then I really realized on my journey and becoming an author and a speaker and sharing my story, how many women from trauma suffer in silence. Nobody wants to hear a woman's poor pity party me story. And, we get ostracized as being emotional, and we're supposed to be strong, independent women and all of these different things. And so we shove it down, and that causes a lot of illness and chaos. And then just like men, all of a sudden we become in our 40s, our kids are getting older, we're starting to get empty nest, and now we're left with our husband. We've had this career that we've done all the right things for everybody else. And then all of a sudden you come to a point in your life and you're like, I don't know who I am. I don't even know what I like anymore. I don't even know who my husband is or what happened here. You live your life for everybody else beside yourself. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? All of a sudden you get to that point where you're not that young spring chicken anymore, and life is all of a sudden going in a blink of an eye. Now how do I find myself again? And that's where I've learned that I have an extremely beautiful gift in helping to guide. I don't consider myself a coach. I consider myself a guide. I don't have all the answers. Everybody's life is different. Everybody's perspective, everybody's traumas, everybody is in a different position in their life. I am here to help guide you back to yourself, back to that divine feminine, to see yourself as this sexy, beautiful woman that you lost, because we lose our image after kids and women and everything else, but also to help you all of those unprocessed emotions that we never dealt with as a child, and in our marriages and in our relationships, and to grow to be the best versions of ourselves so that we can turn around and give back. Because I think that's the most important thing. And it's something that you just touched on, is we have a priority in our life when we come through something and we come out the other side, hold our hand out and say, hey, listen, it's not going to be, but I can tell you, you're not going to be alone. And I can give you some hints as to things that you can do to guide you along this path so it doesn't hurt as much. But no matter what, you're going to come out the other side and you're going to be okay. And you are going to thrive and bloom into this beautiful human being that you were created to be. And so when I did this journey for myself, now all of a sudden I'm like, there's other women that need this. And so that's where rewilding the divine feminine came from, was that need for me to turn around and say, hey, I don't have all these answers. I can't fix everything for you, but I can help guide you along the way. So come get lost in the woods, in the jungle, wherever the retreat may be for 4 or 5 days. And let's get back in touch with nature. Let's get back in touch with ourselves. Let's figure this out together, and then build that community of women who are rooting for you, who are there for you, who are also on this journey of healing. Because we never reach this ultimate goal where things don't hurt anymore, or that we don't know. It's a constant journey. We're always evolving. We're always growing. And so that's where that passion came from, was that deep need within myself due to the severe trauma that I had growing up, and feeling alone and feeling like I didn't have a voice. I wasn't seen. I wasn't heard. And then when I realized it, and I learned to love myself again, and been on this journey and did all that hard, because it's hard work. Anybody who says the journey back to yourself is not hard work, the healing journey, going to those deep, dark places that we wish we could just, forget, but that's where you need to go. Those are the places first where you need to go, is get rid of all of that stuff that holds you back. And then once you get rid of that, you can think clearly. Your vision becomes clear. Your purpose becomes clear. And I think that's what's so important. And we lose that in today's society, the hustle bustle, the grind, the get it done, that we don't take time for, especially as women. We don't take time for ourselves. We literally sacrifice ourselves for everybody else. And so I think that that's really where, my journey is, where this stemmed from.
I wonder, I'm going to contradict myself, but I think that this is a duality. What's the best way to say it? There's a duality in the human being, right? We all seem to think that this just happens to us, right? Or this just happens to my racial group or my gender, right? I do see a difference in people, right? I see who people are. But what the duality in that is, that I've found, is we are all so much more alike than we're unalike. Everything that you just said that describes women describes men, because men, really, like, men just give themselves away. Like, they just do everything for everybody else. There are a lot of men, especially husbands, who fall into that category. So I think for me personally, because I understand you answered my question about why not men really well, and I'm grateful for that. But I do think that your process has a lot of value for us as men too, because there are so many things. Honestly, there isn't anything you said that couldn't apply to men.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And that's why I said, I think that men suffer in silence. Different perspective and a mentality. And I think that too is wise, because for me, a lot of that fear and that insecurity and a lot of the abuse within my life came from men. And so, I can't speak from a man's perspective, because it is a different angle. I think there's a lot of men. I think there's a lot of women who have not been through the healing journey that they need to be on. And then there's men that are trying to support their women, but they're on a healing journey as well. And you got two lost individuals trying to come together in codependency. And you see a lot of that because there's a lot of us that don't do that inner work. A lot of us that think we do, but we really don't.
If I had a nickel for every time I had someone say, I do my inner work. No.
I think that men don't even know where to begin or where to ask for help. And I think that's the difference is women do come together more in community, but I think that's where the defining line is. And I think I see more of it now in a lot of these more elite communities, these networking groups. I really see a lot of men supporting other men within these groups. And I think that's why they get to where they go, because they talk about the reality. They talk about their own mental illness. They talk about their relationships with their wives. They talk about sex addiction. They talk about business and how to deal with customers and how to, you know what I mean? Like it's an overall, I see in these elite groups now, these elite networking groups where they are pouring in, men are realizing how important that is to each other. But I think that once you understand business and you become to understand community and networking and what it really takes, because there's a lot of truth in how you do something is how you do everything. The way that you are with your spouse and how you communicate and all of those things is also a reflection of how you run your business and how you deal with people. And so like there's so much connection between intimate relationships and your own mentalness. If you can't get out of your own way, how are you going to lead others? You know what I mean? So there's this connection that people are really realizing between inner work and business, communication and getting rid of all of those things that no longer serve us, that we're afraid of, and talking about these things because there's so much power in our words. There's so much power in being in community and sharing, you know what I mean? Like to help others to realize they're not alone. That there are other people here too, that we don't have to suffer in silence. And I think that I'm seeing a lot more of it too, but I wish I saw a lot more.
I think it's coming. So we had Dr. Nicole on here recently, and she said something that was absolutely earth-shattering to me.
I love her.
Absolutely earth-shattering. And I think it's so true because as men, we don't want to talk about it, right? And a lot of times what people want us to do, what our wives and girlfriends and even therapists want us to do, is they want us to talk about the event. And when you talk, if you have a trauma, especially a serious one, and you're talking about what happened, the event is in the past, but it re-traumatizes you. And that's all it does, is it re-traumatizes you. And Nicole says, I don't need to know the story. I don't need to know what happened. The event is in the past. It's the emotion that you're still carrying with yourself right now we have to deal with. So let's deal with the emotion. And, even just thinking about it, there's this huge sense of relief that just like, all right, that's gone. And now we can just talk about the emotion. And I think if more men realize, like, look, what's going on for you? You're angry? Okay, great. Well, we don't have to say necessarily why. We know the event, but let's process that anger. And it's totally different because now we don't have to tell a stranger. We don't have to tell our wives. So tell anyone about the event. We can talk about the emotion. If something happened and I'm angry and I don't want to be re-traumatized, I'm willing to talk about the emotion, but I don't want to talk about the event.
I think that's where men struggle. You're absolutely right. It's with the emotion. Let's not talk about it. Passive aggressive.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's uncomfortable. Why do we got to talk about it? That's not productive. Unless you're talking about it's not going to get me anywhere, it's not going to do anything. So I'm the back burner. I got to work this. I got to do this. So they never deal with this. And then you got your wife over here or your girlfriend or whoever who's like, we never resolved this. It comes up 6 months later. And then they're like, why are you bringing this up again? It's like, because it was never resolved. We never talked about it. We never communicated. You never went through the emotions. You just were like, I ain't got time for this, and shoved it down because it's emotion. Men don't know how to deal with emotion.
I would argue that men do know how to deal with emotions. If your man is not talking to you, right, it's because he feels, or it has happened to him, that discussing his emotions have been weaponized against him. So he no longer trusts someone with his emotion. And it might not be the woman he's with. It could have happened once or twice with somebody else. But that's why that's why most men don't communicate. It's not that we don't know how. It's not that we don't necessarily want to. It's that we've been abused with it badly. And we're like, whoosh, we're just, nope, don't need to talk to you about it. Don't need to talk to you about it. Because what he's saying is, I don't trust you. And that's what women don't want to hear. And the other thing is we live in this society where we're constantly baited. Like, you want a compliment, so rather than asking for the compliment, you bait us and say, how do I look? And it's, oh, you look great. Are you sure? I feel like you're lying.
My electricity just went out.
Your modem might go out too. You're going up and down.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay.
So,
well, hello, I'm Fuzzy Blob.
You are, but that's okay. But I guess my point is that we are, who said it really well to me was Stacey Rasky. She's like, guys are not stupid. I'm like, no, we just play stupid. We just don't want to fight. We don't want the drama. We got other stuff we'd rather spend our time on. So we just let you win. Right? That is very common. It's not every guy, but it's most of us. And if we explode, it's because either we've been pushing it down, which is sometimes the case, or like we just had enough. We just leave us alone. And so, I think the hard part is that a lot of times both examples are correct. And so we want our reality to be the correct version of it, right? So as long as you're working with a partner who's genuine, you're going to be able to work it out, right? You're going to be able to work it out.
I think that communication is key. Communication is everything, in anything, in business, in relationships, friendships, intimate relationships. Communication is key. And what people I'm finding, and what I see, and especially when I speak to others as they're going through things, is we think that communication is like, I say how I feel and what I'm doing and what I think the solution is, but you're not listening to the other person. I'm communicating. I'm telling you how I feel. I'm telling you what I'm going through, but you're not open discussion from both ends and trying to understand, and to also see that people have different views, have different opinions. Sometimes you can agree to disagree. That doesn't mean that you're fighting. Sometimes you just have different opinions and it's just not going to go anywhere, and that's okay. But the thing is we get into these battles of, I am communicating. Okay, communication is listening and speaking. It's understanding. It's not taking things personal. How we can navigate around this for the best solution. And that most people don't know how to communicate. They think that communicating is just voicing their opinion. And because the other person doesn't agree with them, and it becomes an argument then, instead of communicating, that is communicating. Oh, you don't communicate with me. I communicate with you. Everything's just a fight with you. No, because you're not sitting down saying, okay, this is another human being. This is somebody who I care about deeply, and we need to discuss this. And we may not agree, and we may see things from different perspectives. The importance of this discussion is so that we can both go through the emotions to communicate how we're feeling, what we think a solution is, but we also have to listen to the other person. We have to understand some trauma wound from 10 years ago, and it has nothing to do with you. But we take everything personal and we label it, and you want to say, oh, well, we communicate, but that's not real communication. And that's where I think there's a lot of unease in this too, is like, men and women, we communicate differently. We see things from different perspectives. And if we don't try to understand this, where the other person is coming from, doesn't mean that they're right, doesn't mean that they're wrong, but to try to understand where they're coming from, and instead of labeling it and being in our ego and being like, I'm right, you're wrong, because that's really what's going through our heads when we talk about it. We want to be right, but to understand. And there may not be a solution, there may not be an outcome, but allow each person to voice and to listen and to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel, like I'm not just talking to a wall and then you screaming back at me because you're taking one portion of what I said defensively and only focusing on that one part. And so, like, we have to learn how to communicate again.
there's so much more I want to say. So I want to, before we go, I'm going to propose this. I want to have you and Dr. Nicole on at the same time.
Oh, absolutely.
I have this,
She's at my retreat. She's a facilitator at one of
I know I sponsored her.
Oh yeah, that's right. Duh. Hello.
So I'm going to make that happen. Maybe we'll do it next month. Maybe we'll do it in October. This has been fantastic. This has been absolutely fantastic. Let me just do this sign off. Oh, just real quick, drop your URL to your website. Just tell everyone what it is.
Absolutely. So if you guys are looking for DelawareRedPitbulls.com, if you're looking for French Bulldogs, MamamoFrenchies.com, and then, everything social media, Brandy _the Pitbull, if you want to follow her and all of her Hollywood adventures with her celebrities. And really just, hit me up. Facebook, Monique Klasowski. That's where I'm most active, and that's where you'll get to see the most of me.
Awesome. So Monique, thanks again for being here today. You brought the thunder, man. You brought some great answers.
Good. I'm glad. I enjoyed it.
I can't wait to have you on again. All right, everybody. We'll catch you guys next time around. Thank you for showing up and watching from here.